Hi, I'm Joyce Harper, Professor of Reproductive Science at the Institute for Women's Health at University College London. Welcome to Season 3 of my podcast, Why Didn't Anyone Tell Me This? This season, we'll be diving into topics that explore how to achieve good health and happiness. I'll be speaking with leading experts who will provide evidence-based advice and debunk some of the many myths around our health. Additionally, I'll be having conversations with individuals who bring unique perspectives through their lived experiences. In Season 3, we'll cover a diverse range of topics, including reproductive anatomy, inspiring female icons, chronic health conditions, factors that influence our well-being, and global women's health issues. I really hope you enjoy Season 3 of Why Didn't Anyone Tell Me This? It's a great pleasure today to speak to Debbie Robinson, the Yoga Junkie, about sound baths, vibrations for wellness. And this is part of my season on reclaiming joy because I love sound baths and they give me the deepest meditation I've ever had. And I feel very relaxed and very joyful after them. But I know some people don't get them. They don't know what happens during a sound bath or what effects it has on the body and why you would even go to one. So we're going to answer those questions today. Now, Debbie is a spiritual coach, certified grief recovery specialist, teacher of multiple yoga lineages, a menopause coach, and much, much more. She is certified in so many different types of yoga and is accredited by the Yoga Alliance with over 25 years yoga experience. Debbie is also trained in mental health and occupational safety and health. Debbie was born into an environment marked by dysfunction and has navigated a world without safety or guidance. From this experience, she brings together the transformative power of movement, mindfulness, spirituality, and healing into a cohesive experience that truly supports people in their journey. She has created something that is both essential and is expansive, a sanctuary for those seeking not just physical wellness, but a deeper connection to themselves. She runs one-to-one sessions, workshops, and retreats, and offers eco-conscious yoga accessories and a range of sustainable clothing, embodying her commitment to the environment. Welcome, Debbie.
Hello, Joyce.
So we met at the Big Retreat Festival, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But Debbie, I always start by asking my guests about their career and how you became to work in the many different practices that you have been working in over the last decade. So tell us about your journey.
Everything that I teach, I've learned for myself first, so through lived experience. And I went through early menopause, and it was misdiagnosed as depression. And my journey started then. I started to uncover that it wasn't actually depression that I was suffering from, it was menopause. And so I started to look at ways of addressing and helping myself. And in 2019, I became a yoga teacher. And that opened a portal to lots of other possibilities for me. I've practiced yoga for, 34 years. So I feel as if I've always been a teacher at heart, and formalizing that in 2019 was the start of a completely new chapter for me.
Wow, that's it's so amazing. We're going to talk about your work in yoga in a moment, but you, as I said, I met you at the Big Retreat Festival, and there you did, which I attended, the most amazing, my favorite yet. And I've been to lots of sound baths, but you did an amazing 90-minute sound bath, and I was right at the front, and it was absolutely stunning. But I know that some people don't understand what a sound bath is and what you do, and people are always asking me this question. So, Debbie, let's start at the basics. What actually is a sound bath?
Okay, so a sound bath is an immersive experience where you get bathed in vibrations and frequencies from sound healing instruments. different practitioners use different instruments. It's curated slightly differently by each practitioner. But for example, you would use instruments such as koshi chimes, singing crystal singing bowls, Tibetan bowls, gongs, harp, drums. That there's an array of instruments that can be used, and they're all at different frequencies. And just like our organs are functioning at different frequencies, the sound bath vibrations help to bring your organs and the body back into homeostasis, back into balance, harmonizing them all. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And when I first started going, I've lost count of how many I've been to now, but when I first started going, they were mainly gong baths. So I think that's about six,
Mm,
7 years ago. And I know that the gongs are amazing. Those
mm,
that watch the clips of this video will see some of your gongs at the back. But now we have it seems more popular for practitioners, as you say, to use lots of different instruments.
mm.
So why is that changed, do you think? I mean, I thought just practicalities. The gongs are enormous, aren't they? I don't know how people get them around, but even the bowls and things that you use are very fragile. So um, what's the practicalities of that?
I think perhaps the sound healing has evolved and reaching higher frequencies. You know, the gongs are very earthen, very grounding. They can also reach the higher realms and help you to access your higher chakras, your higher wisdom body and spiritual body as well. But I think there are so many different instruments that can be incorporated that have a really positive effect on the body, that it's just a natural evolution to use other instruments.
Yeah, I'm very glad they do. And you also
Mm,
use your voice, and your
mm.
your voice is stunning. Tell me a little bit about how you choose which instruments to play.
Okay, so the way that I craft my sound healing guided meditations, I call them, because it's slightly different to what I class as a traditional gong bath or sound bath. And that's because I'm trained in yoga nidra meditation, and I weave in lots of different training modalities that I've practiced over the years. And for me, I will do a guided yoga nidra meditation because lots of people really struggle dropping into that relaxed state. And hearing a guided voice leading them in really helps them to drop them into that alpha state where they are laying comfortably, just about to get into like a meditative state. And my voice, I've been told on numerous occasions that my voice is quite soothing. And from quite a young age, I used to sing. And I stopped singing when I was around about 14 because my voice became a competition. So my parents would enter me into competitions to win holidays and various other things. And it actually turned my voice off and stopped me from wanting to do that freely. And so when I started my sound healing training about 3 years ago, just 3 years ago, using your voice is one of the most powerful instruments that you can use, most effective instruments that you can use. It was part of that process. So it was just 3 years ago that I had reintroduced my voice and started using it in sound healing experiences.
And thank you so much for doing that. And so I've called this mini. So I do my podcast in mini series, and I've called this mini series "Reclaiming Joy," and it's
Okay.
not a coincidence that in this series, so just before you, we've had
Mm.
a podcast on why we sing with Julia Hollander,
Yeah.
and also with my drumming mentor, so shamanic drumming, Sophie Messenger. We have done a
Okay.
podcast about drumming, and so for
Yeah.
me, the and for me, music's very. It's always been very important. But I think for most people, if you look at those, how many people walk around with headphones on listening to music? Music is
Mm.
very important to people,
Mm.
and you've talked about meditation. So I'm someone that finds it really difficult to sit still. But during
Yeah.
a sound bath or a sound healing
Mm.
session, I get into very, very deep meditations very, very easily. And I'm not the
Yeah.
only one who comes out of it and thinks, where did that go? That didn't seem like 60 minutes or 90 minutes. The time goes really fast.
Yeah.
But for those that don't know, can you tell us, so when we arrive at the session,
Yeah.
what do we
Mm.
do? People have asked me, I think they think we sit in a bath or something, or they think we have to do something. So can you tell us what,
Mm.
when we come as a guest to a session, what do we have to
Yeah.
do?
Okay. So my my sound bath experiences are 2 hours. I do a minimum of 2 hours. And that was originally an hour, but an hour wasn't enough. And this is just my experience and the way that I create them. I think by the time people arrive and they start to relax and climb inside the hammock, because my immersions are suspended in hammocks. You can see some of them behind me here, Joyce. So I started off at ground level, and then I became an aerial yoga teacher, and I thought I'd combine the two. And it has completely changed the experience for the participants. That's the feedback that I've had, and that's what I witness. And so I craft them based on seasons. It could be phases of the moon. It could be what's generally going on in the environment around us. So I will have an idea of what type of meditation to create. And then I'll develop that meditation. And sometimes I have to adapt, because if people bring a +1, they'll sometimes switch them. And so I might have created a sound bath that is specific for the divine feminine, and then hubby comes along, and so I have to I have to change and be adaptive really quickly, and change him to her to him, and switch it up. So you've got to really think on your feet with these experiences. And so I'll create the meditation, and then I will feel into, because I'm very intuitive, and I follow my gut instinct and my heart, and I think, right, what kind of musical instruments am I going to play and how I'm going to play them? Because it's not necessarily what instruments you use, it's how you use them as well. And I will create, but I'll have this creation in my head, and I'll do a little practice run, but that changes and moves with the energy in the room. And so everybody that comes here, they'll expect one thing, and I might deliver slightly different, but they're all used to the way that I deliver now. And so they'll come in. We'll pop the shoes off outside the studio. This is quite detailed, Joyce. Outside the studio, I would have already cleared and cleansed the environment myself, my instruments. It's really important to clear off any old energy. And then they'll be invited in. I've got a team now together which helps people get in and out of the hammocks, because obviously you're working at height and there has to be a duty of care. So I don't just leave them jump in and hope for the best. There is a system in place. I've got these boxes where they stand on these platforms, and we help them get in. And my training in aerial yoga helped me to acquire those skills, because and I've also got like a NEBOSH qualification. So I'm a compliance manager in my past life. And so those skills have been transferred into this job, which you probably wouldn't put together, but I think they are embedded in me, I think, from all angles and all levels, which has been really useful in what I do now. And so we get them into the hammocks. I talk them through what to expect. And I'll give you an example. So I harmonize my voice. You would have experienced that at the big retreat. So lots of people said to me, your voice was coming from the left, it was coming from the right. How did you do that? And so I always explain at the start of the session that I'll be harmonizing, and it's my voice and it's my voice. So I'll have a pre-recorded song, and I will add layers of my own voice to that song and harmonize with myself, essentially. Because what I was finding is that people, instead of dropping into that lovely alpha theta state where you're relaxing or daydreaming, they were stimulated and really curious where and how that was happening. How is her voice everywhere? Is there two of her? Is there three of her? And so now I settle them down and I just explain as much as I can so that they can relax their mind and they think in caps, and they can just put them to bed and fully relax, knowing that just, enjoying and accepting is where they need to focus their attention. And so I've got pillows, I've got blankets, we've got eye masks. So I pop them into their hammocks and they lay there ready, and then we do some breathing techniques. And then I start to talk them through the guided meditation. And then I'll say to them to expect deliberate silences, and those silences are there for a reason, for them to just be immersed in sound. And if they don't follow the meditation, don't worry, because some people have fed back with, oh, I was really annoyed because I didn't get to the end of that meditation. And I woke up and I was really disappointed because I didn't hear the end of that story. And so I say to them now, listen, my voice is there to just gently guide you into the state that you're meant to be in. Don't worry if you don't hear my voice. That's not the point. It's not the point. And so I think giving them upfront as much information as you can to start with really, really helps them to drop into their bodies. And then I'll sing to them, I'll use all different instruments, and then we'll do a cleansing ritual to clear the energy just before the end of the session. We always end with an optional card draw, so oracle cards or angel cards. And I will always ground them right at the end. So we'll do some more breath work, and they'll have a snack and they'll have a hot beverage, because one thing that became quite apparent at the end of my sessions, and also sometimes longer sessions, they'll drop into their delta phase as well. So they'll get into a deep sleep. And so when they wake up, they're not very aroused, so it takes them a good 15, 20 minutes to ground. And as I said earlier, I've got a duty of care to these participants, to the students, and I want to make sure that they're safe to drive home. And they'll have an aftercare sheet, which they take home with them, with expectations, what to expect. And in that aftercare sheet, there will also be contact numbers. If they have any deep emotional releases, in the days and weeks to come, then they have got a point of contact, because you just don't know if people are, going home to an empty house and they don't have anybody that they can confide in. So the duty of care travels all the way home with them. And they've always got my number as well. And I'm always on hand to assist anybody.
That is absolutely brilliant. That's exactly what I wanted. A couple of things I just want to take up. I
Yeah,
definitely don't feel ready to drive after I've been to a sound
no,
bath. For sure,
no.
I have to wait some time, and so that's really
Mm,
brilliant advice about waiting, 15 minutes or so.
mm.
And today, I've just told you before we started recording. Today, I'm actually going to my second floating sound bath, and
Yeah,
the so that's a similar theory to your hammocks, to being suspended. And I years ago I
yes,
did go in a flotation tank, which I get a little bit claustrophobic, and it's a bit like being in a coffin, so I didn't really like it.
yeah,
And that the whole point of that is no senses are stimulated, whereas with the sound bath, obviously we're stimulating the
mm,
vibrations as well as what we hear. So
yeah,
I think being off the ground in some way makes it very powerful, doesn't it? I can see why you're using the
yeah.
hammocks.
And I think the feedback that I've had, and I'd love to attend one of my own sound baths, Joyce, because I'm ultra fussy and I curate my experiences as I would like to experience. And so that's kind of my motto with everything in life. If I drop into positions where I meet people where they are, and I am compassionate, and I get it, I understand, and I'd love to attend one of my own ones. But being in the hammock has been likened to being back in the womb
Mm.
and being cocooned in safety. And one of the things that's really important, especially with the kind of clientele that attend these baths, is some people don't feel safe. They don't feel safe in their bodies from a history of trauma or life experiences. And when you're laying inside a hammock, you're almost given that permission to release freely without any judgment, without anybody, looking in your direction or making you feel uncomfortable. And oftentimes prior to being in the hammocks, there would be individuals on the floor, and you just knew they were holding because they were laying in close proximity to strangers, and they were not comfortable having emotional releases. And so you just knew that they were like a container of pain. And the feedback that's come through is that being individualized in these cocoons of what has come across as safety allows them the freedom to express and feel held, feel safe inside their own bodies, and express as much as they need to freely.
That's really beautiful. I definitely need to come to one of yours, but we're separated by a long way. But
No.
one day, I,
One
I,
day,
I
definitely.
I definitely want to pick up on the healing and the responses that people have in a moment. But you
Mm.
mentioned that you do yours for 2 hours now. And I do
Yeah.
go to a lovely lake that we go cold water swimming in. And it's lovely. And
Yeah.
they've really tried to do lots of wonderful things. And they've built a beautiful teepee. But we've been to a couple of
Mm.
sound baths there. And they were 45 minutes from start to finish, including the meditations.
Ooh.
And I thought the first one, I thought there was something not right. Then the second one,
Mm.
I actually looked at my watch and she only played the various instruments for 20 minutes. And
Mm.
I just realized, number one, that didn't work for me. I mean, I did get into a deep meditation, but I felt there was something missing. But also,
Mm.
they mixed it with then going into the lake for cold water swimming. And very soon I realized, well, the first time I realized the
Mm.
last thing I want to do now, and I love
Mm.
getting in any puddle of water. I'll
Mm.
it's my thing is while swimming. I really
Mm.
did not want to go into a cold lake after
No.
being at a sound bath. Can you
Mm.
relate to that?
Yeah, I think when you're in that deep sort of meditation state, and sometimes you can even drop into gamma for a very short period of time, which is, when you reach the spiritual realms, you want to feel in a place of safety, and I think that warmth, isn't it? So I've had experience myself of going to sound baths where you're freezing cold and you
Mm.
you can't relax. You're irritated. It has the reverse effect on you because you don't find it relaxing, and because it's not relaxing, because the temperature's all wrong, you can't drop into that lovely theta state. And I think for me that would, number one, in my opinion, in my experience, number one, it's a very short, seems almost rushed experience. And then cold water immersion after it, I don't know, my body would probably potentially go into some kind of shock.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be my choice, but I'm sure that the practitioner would have some kind of format for that experience. But were you advised that that was going to be the arrangement at the start?
Yeah, we thought it was going to be a good idea. They also do yoga and they do a sort of package. They do
Mm.
yoga and going in the lake as well. And I realized after the yoga session,
Mm.
no, I do not want to go in the lake. And the people organizing
Yeah.
the lake were not the people. They weren't the practitioners. The practitioners packed up and went home. They
Mm.
didn't go in the water.
Oh my
So no,
gosh.
yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Mm.
Just anyone listening
Yeah.
out there who thinks that's a good idea, maybe the other way around, but that doesn't work.
Yeah, and I think, having agency over your decisions as well. I mean, that's going to come into this as well. Just, you know what you like, you know what you don't like, and it's important to voice that, and maybe channeling your opinion and your view on that into their feedback system for them to really think about that. Because I never take feedback as negative. We are a continual work in progress. We're always learning. Every day is a school day, and I actually love feedback because it helps me to improve and refine what I offer. So never hold back. Just be honest for their sake as well as your own.
Absolutely. Being an educator, we love feedback
Mm.
because, and you being a therapist and a practitioner, because the only way we'll know the response to anything is if people tell us, and it's all about the person we're delivering.
100%.
We're delivering to people.
Yeah,
It's not about us at
yeah,
all. So we might design something, but we absolutely need positive and negative feedback for sure.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I hope this next section is going to work, but Debbie has kindly recorded some of the sounds in her studio, and I have found that using the platform I'm using for my podcast, extra sounds that are not voices don't come out so well. When we did the drumming podcast with Sophie, it all got a little bit distorted. So I hope this is going to work, but please remember that in a sound bath, it's the vibrations that are really key. So I think just listening to it is not a good that good an experience. But I just wanted to give you a flavour. So Debbie's recorded an excerpt from one of her gongs, and then I'm going to play about a minute of one of the wonderful recordings she's done where she's singing as well as playing the instruments. But in most of the sound baths I go to, the practitioner doesn't actually sing, but Debbie's voice is so wonderful. I thought it'd be lovely to play that to you. So I hope this comes out okay and enjoy, and then we'll get back to the conversation.
Om Namo Gurudev Namo Om Namo Gurudev Om Namo Gurudev Namo.
What I really wanted to delve into now is the responses people have. So let's talk about what it could have the potential to do. And I have asked all the people I've interviewed about the reclaiming joy, so that the singing and the drumming and everything else, about the physical and mental health benefits associated with that. So for sound baths, do we know that there are physical and mental health benefits of attending one?
Yeah, I mean, this is something because obviously you deal with your focus is on women's health, isn't it, and menopause and the reproductive system. So I've chosen actually one of the chakras, one of the frequency of the reproductive organs, the womb, as an example, and the sacral chakra, which is your reproductive lower energy center. There's a crystal bowl as an example. The crystal bowl will help you to release any creativity that might have been lying dormant in there, emotional fluidity. There'll be it's associated with healing of the womb. It helps for your lymphatic system to be activated, so you flush out toxins a lot more efficiently. There's lots of there's lots of evidence to suggest that it helps reduce your anxiety levels, your stress levels. It promotes relaxation. It helps with depression, to alleviate some symptoms of depression, and it goes on and on and on. Brain fog, and in menopausal women, and releasing trapped emotions. And so I deal with grief as well a lot, and this grief piece is so important, because it's not grief in the traditional sense. It's the grief of maybe you've had a hysterectomy and you're grieving that womb and the space and the void that it's left and the repercussions of that. You could be grieving your inability to conceive, and you're grieving not being a mum. It's the absence of something that you have a longing for and unable to have. So grief comes in so many different untraditional forms, but it helps with all of that. It helps to unlock that container of emotions and release in order for you to find space for joy.
Absolutely. This is why I want to talk to you about sound baths, because I really think that it can help through, for me especially, through with the meditation and the resetting. I think we lead such stressful lives nowadays. We like we would have to turn our computer on and off every now and then. We don't do that. But
No.
some of the topics I've brought in this series are encouraging people to do that, whether it's drumming or singing. But especially for me, meditation and the sound bath meditations, I feel afterwards like I've turned my brain on and off and reset it and
Yeah.
restarted it with all the tabs closed, and I'm now in a much clearer state. And cold water swimming does that for me as well. And I've seen. I know some people are going to think it's a term that I've used a few times, and I know some people don't like it, but some people might think this is a bit woo-woo. And I'm an evidence-based scientist. I always look for research that shows something, proves something. But I know that for me, this really relaxes me, really resets me. But I've also seen people, you talked about grief, I've seen people become very emotional. So after or during the session, they will cry. And really those feelings, and they often say, I didn't think that was going to happen. Where did that come from? So it really can, the sound can really bring out those emotions, and some things we're not even thinking about. We think it might be buried, and it can bring them out, can't it?
Yeah, and it can, and I think the anger, and that there's lots of things, and you were talking earlier about people's feedback about their sound bath experience. It's not always positive. It's to them, it's like, oh, what was that instrument that you just used? It was like sandpaper on my skin, and I was really enjoying until you used the ocean drum, and then all of a sudden I was really angry and irritated, and so these experiences are maybe showing you something that you need to perhaps nurture, like your tolerance or your patience, or some of these instruments are releasing instruments. So we are aiming to get you to that point where you release, and you might be annoyed, and so it's having those honest conversations with people and letting them know as well that that's also something that's likely and to be expected during a sound bath. It's not always going to be rainbows and butterflies, not always. It's not.
Yeah, that's a very,
Yeah.
very important point, and I think very important. I don't think I've been to very few sound baths where they've actually explained that things might come up, and
Yeah.
so be prepared. Um,
Yeah.
and you've talked about some of the different instruments having different frequencies work on different parts of the body.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is, how do we know about this? Does this sort of come from, probably these instruments have been used for hundreds of years, thousands of years, maybe some of them.
Yeah, but I think there are different instruments that access different parts of your body. So, for instance, the tuning forks help you to access the brain. So, the frequency of the brain is something like 960 hertz, and the tuning forks help you to access that part of the brain, and that will help you to activate your brain waves to get you into like a restful night's sleep, for instance, and helps you with dream work. So they're all at different frequencies. We spoke about the crystal bowl, that's in a note of D, and that's all to do with the reproductive system. They're all at different frequencies to help you to access and bring harmony into those different parts of the body. And everything has just become more, I suppose, more known, isn't it? And that sound healing has just become such a big part of the healing environment now, that people are keen to develop and learn more and do more, and more information is coming to the surface all the time, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly why I wanted to do this. I asked my local sports centre if they would host one of the floating sound bars. One of my
Yeah,
colleagues who works there, she just said, "But I don't get it. What do you do? Why do you do it?" So
yeah.
I hope we're answering those. Well, you're answering those questions.
I hope so. I hope so.
I think you are. I think you are. Now, I hope you don't mind, and I hope I do this justice. But at the big retreat festival, you
Yeah.
said these words, and I can't remember how I've got them, but they are beautiful
Okay.
words. So I hope you don't mind.
Yeah.
I'm going to read them out. So I hope I do
No.
it justice. You said, I hope this is what you said. Um, this work heals me too. As others soften, I soften. As the room receives,
Yeah.
I receive. It's never one
Yeah.
way. This isn't
No.
performance, it's resonance. And truth always
Mm.
finds its frequency.
I said that. Yeah, it's all absolutely true, and practitioners, as they hold these experiences, of course, the vibrations and the frequencies are being accessed by them too. And I've been in therapy for the last 5 years, and I think I I will always be continuing to be a better person every day. Every day I'm a different person to what I was yesterday. And I think it does soften you. Sound does soften you. It softens any spiky bits. It softens all the hard edges. And the practitioner receives as well. And to see an audience in front of me bathed in frequencies that I am curating, it just absolutely just lights me up. It just fills me with joy. And I think something to bear in mind that I feel quite strong about, I don't feel that it's a performance. And I had a bit of a heated one the other day with a friend of mine, because she said to me, "You need to stop greeting people when they come into the door. You're giving your energy away and you're attracting their energy. And you need to walk in now like you're a performer going on the stage, and you just need to have this, boundary around you, and they shouldn't have access to you like they do." And I said, that's never going to happen. Because it's the connection. It's, you start creating barriers, and it seems like a barrier rather than a boundary. I am boundaried. I know I live within those boundaries, but that just seems like I'm not a performer. I'm not a performer. This is who I am. It's not what I do. And I think you can get carried away by ego. And I will always remain humble and grounded, and my feet are deeply rooted to Mother Earth. And I'm not a performer.
I feel the same as you. I give a lot of talks, public talk, conference talks, and public and TV, radio, and things. For if I'm giving a talk in front of an audience, the one thing I try never to do is just stand there and talk without an interaction with my audience. So I will normally ask them a question, even if it's just a show of hands, if it's a small group, some discussion. I always look at it as a two-way process. It's
Yes.
not just me, it's us. And
Yes.
I want to hear from them. I want to hear what they think and how they're feeling about what I'm saying. So I can totally relate to how you feel about that. Yeah, for sure.
And I think at the beginning of my sessions, and I recall doing this at the beginning of the big retreat this year and the one last year, and I do it in lots of my retreats and workshops. I'll say to them, the only difference between you and me is the position I'm sitting in. I'm sitting opposite you. I'm exactly the same. I'm no different from you. And people just settle with that straight away, because I'm not. I'm not any different to them. I'm on my healing journey too, and I will continue to be on my healing journey for probably the rest of my life, and I'm good with that, because I love learning about myself more and more every day. I love learning about myself.
That's amazing. And I've got one last question about sound baths before we move
Yeah.
on to yoga and other things. I think a lot of people get confused. I think with gongs as well. I think they just think you bash the gong, but people, I know it's funny, but I just think, just to bang the gong. But
Yeah.
for most of the instruments, you don't do that, do you? You're going around them or sort of rubbing
Mm.
them. Can you just explain that?
Of course. So I use what's called a flumi, and it looks like a giant rubber lollipop, and it comes it comes in different sizes. And I think I mentioned to you at the big retreat last year at the big retreat. I use it quite strong, so I'm quite a strong female, and I put a lot of pressure because it creates friction. The rubber against the metal creates friction, and it creates completely different sounds to when you use a mallet, a traditional mallet. And each flumi of a different size creates a completely different sound. And last year at Big Retreat, right at the beginning, I was using the flumi and I was working the gong and I was going around the gong, and the head popped off
I remember.
and it bounced on the stage and it went bounce, bounce. And it was just like in slow motion, and it hit this poor gentleman on the head. And he didn't flinch, he didn't move, he was so graceful. But I had to acknowledge it at the end of the session and apologize. And it did create laughter in the room. But I'll always remember that story because that was the flumi story. So yeah, and this week I've used, and I play with my instruments and I trial different things. So this week I've been tapping the gong with my nails. I've been tapping it with my knuckles. I play the gong from behind, not just at the front. I always avoid the center of the gong, the heart of the gong, because I just don't ever play the heart. I feel that it's sacred, like my heart is sacred. The heart of my gong is sacred. So I'll always play around the heart. And so, yeah, and you can combine the gong with another instrument. And yeah, you don't just, traditionally use a mallet. You can be creative, really creative.
I've just thought of one more question about sound bars. So a lot of people have a mix of instruments, and you've talked about quite a few of them. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the crystal bowls, because they're very, very popular now?
They are,
Yeah,
yeah.
tell us about them.
Okay, so I've got crystal bowls, crystal singing bowls, and they again are all different frequencies, and they are frosted. They frosted crystal, so they are you can't see through them, and they're in various sizes. And I've also got alchemy bowls, which are pure crystal, so you can see through them, and they have more clarity. They're more expensive to buy. You generally have a lot less for your money, but they are very, very powerful. The sounds of them are pure. They are a completely different level. And I think my husband said he's going to be working until he's about 105 to fund all of my sound instruments because most of the work that I do is charitable. So around about, I'd say now about 40, 60. So 40% of my work is charitable. And so the income's not coming in for me to pay for the instruments. So, I'm addicted. I just can't stop buying instruments, but it's filling my space at the moment. So I'm going to have to wind it back, I think, a little bit.
You did at the big retreat. I've never seen such an array of instruments, and there's
Yeah,
lots of other instruments. We won't go through them all, but
yeah.
I have a few. I have a drum, and I have a few
Mm.
others, and I keep them in my camper van. And every now and then, I just wiggle them a little bit, and yeah, I find it very, very beautiful. Right,
Yeah,
we're going to concentrate now on some of the other beautiful things you do. So you're called the Yoga Junkie, which everyone I've
yeah,
mentioned that to said that's a great name. So
yeah.
can and this is probably too much to explain in one go, but can you? And you said you've done yoga for decades yourself. Can you
Mm.
tell us a little bit more about your yoga journey and why you feel it's so important?
Yeah, I think one thing to remember about yoga is, for me, it opened a portal, and lots of people will make reference to yoga as being movements on a mat, and yoga is a state of being. It's not the place of doing. Yoga is the person that I am, the way that I show up in the world, the way that I treat other people, the way that I act myself, the way that I'm honest, that I speak my truth, that I look after other people, and I just do my best whenever doing my best is possible for me. And that's something really important to remember, because it is the person that you are. You become yoga. Yoga is unity, community. And I think, I just wanted to mention that. My yoga journey started when I was 16, and I went to my very first yoga class with my mother-in-law, and who's still my mother-in-law. And a lot has happened since then. I mean, in the lead up to that first yoga class, I've always practiced dance, and I've done gymnastics, and as we spoke earlier, the singing. So that creative arts has always been in my life. I've always moved my body. So it was inevitable that as I got older, yoga was going to be the route. Yoga practice was going to be the route for me. And around about 2019, I trained as a yoga teacher, and the typical statement, I'm not going to teach, I'm just doing it to deepen my knowledge of the philosophy, right? The translation to that is, I don't feel good enough, I don't feel worthy enough to teach. So, we just disguise that with other words instead. And one of my friends had recommended me, because I had just completed my training, to an organisation that were supporting women that had suffered from domestic violence. And so they approached me, and I couldn't turn that down. Being brought up in an environment where my mother suffered the same, and it was deep wounding for me, I couldn't just turn away from that and deny them help. And so I immersed myself in this organisation, and that's when I started physically teaching. And I decided at that point that they really deeply impacted me, as much as I impacted them, I suppose. And what became apparent to me was how delicate and how soft I needed to be. And physical touch was, on occasion, problematic. So I really had to curate and be gentle and completely change how I approached my yoga practice. And I've been taught Ashtanga primary series, it was very sort of disciplined and hands-on adjustments. And I just had to start letting that go and adapt to the circumstances. And I am a bit of a chameleon. I can adapt, and I can read a room, and I can understand what people's needs are. And so that's how I got into the actual teaching. And I think I did my Reiki healing, my Reiki practice after that, and that opened another portal. And there was a lot of the spiritual energy coming in for me. And I've always been spiritual, and I've always manifested from the age of 7 years. I've manifested, I've always manifested a better, different life. And I was 7 years of age. I ran away to the top of the road, and I hid up a lane. Nobody came looking for me, Joyce. I was one of 5, another number 3. Nobody came for me. And I remember peering over the edge we lived in a council property, peering over the edge, looking at the only one sort of paid for house at the end of the street, private house. And I remember looking over and thinking, I'm going to live in a house like that. This isn't my life. I'm not going to be here forever. And I just remember reflecting on that not so long ago, going, oh my gosh, I was manifesting. I've been manifesting since I was 7 years of age. And that is how my mind and my brain works, and always has. It's just been given that name now, isn't it? Manifestation. It's like, I've been there for a long time. And so then I started to get into sound. So my yoga teacher came. She played a crystal bowl in one of my retreats at the house, the very first retreat that I held. She came along, and I was mesmerized. I was hooked. Music's always been my jam. And, I can cry at my favorite song on repeat, just like self-sabotage. I can just literally keep playing it and keep crying. And I remember listening to the crystal bowl, and for once my brain went quiet. And I remember the vibrations of my body. I felt paralyzed. It had a profound effect on me. And I thought, this coupled with what I'm creating here can be combined. And this is powerful. You've got Reiki, you've got sound, you've got movement. And so I've started to sort of like bolt on different types of healing. So then it was the grief work, and then it was spiritual life coaching and the menopause piece and nutrition, and so there's it's the full suite of support that you need to lead a balanced life.
Yeah, that is really beautiful. And you've just made me think. I think I've always manifested as well.
Mm,
We didn't have a word for it, so thank you for
yeah.
making me realize. I've always been really positive, and I think positive things, and they happen, and it comes about. So
Yeah.
yeah, but we've got a word for it now,
Yes.
which is good.
Precisely.
Always good. Now, you did mention menopause, and you are also a
Yeah.
menopause coach. And obviously,
Mm.
something it's very big at the moment. I'm doing lots of research on it, lots of education about it. So tell us about some of the work you're doing on menopause.
Yeah, so I think with the menopause, I did some training. It was about probably 2 years ago now, and again, it was because I realized that I was out the other side. I had some testing myself done, and I engaged with a practitioner because I was having some issues around my gut. Um, and there was the threat of an operation, and I started to look at alternative routes to healing my gut. And I believe that everything starts in the gut from what I've learned. And so I met a friend on my sound healing journey who was a fermentation expert. And so she and I were having a conversation about the issues that I was having with my gut, and she started me on kombucha. And she then trained me on how to make kombucha, and my gut issues took a U-turn, and the problems that I was experiencing subsided. And I could have signed the dotted line for that operation, and I would have been, on the wait list, and I would have had a stoma bag. And so she introduced me to a herbalist, a homeopath called Inna Duckworth, and I did the Dutch test and a series of other tests to just have a look at what was going on in my body. And we tweaked a few things with supplements. And I found out, that sometimes you have a genetical disposition as well. So I wasn't aware of this, and the herbalist Inna said to me, I shouldn't be looking at somebody who is as fit and healthy as you now, because based on your bloods, she said it should be a completely different case altogether. Because my mum's got lots of chronic illness, and what I looked like on paper was not what was presented in front of her. And she said it's because you have a healthy lifestyle. You do breath work, you move your body, you eat well. My sleep is an issue, but we're working on that. That's the work in progress, my sleep, because I'm hyper. But complete U-turn again. And it was just it's not what you know, it's what you don't know. And I strongly urge any middle-aged woman to have a suite of testing, whether it's the Dutch test or whether it's individual tests with Medichecks, to find out what your levels are looking like, to find out where you're at, to get a baseline data. And like I said, it's not what's going on the outside. It's presented on the outside, but it's very much what's going on the inside. And healing my gut it was fundamentally life changing for me. Fundamentally life changing. But I got into the menopause, sort of the coaching to help myself initially, and then I thought, right, I'm going to help other women to heal their gut now, because they do an element of nutrition in it as well. And I had my lived experience from what I had been through, and I just weaved my lived experience into every offering that I have.
That's really beautiful. grief. I always want to talk about grief. So this is
Yeah.
part of all of our lives, all of us at some
Yeah.
point. And you said grief isn't just about somebody passing. It's much more than that. And so many of us leave this unattended. So can you tell us about the work you're doing on grief?
Yeah. And so the grief program it's called the grief recovery method. And so it's not like a counseling program, it's an action-based program that focuses on taking actionable steps to help you live with grief. So grief never goes away. You learn to make it your companion. You learn to walk with it. You check in with it on a daily and say, I know you're there. Um, so there's a series of different steps that you take, and we create a timeline right at the beginning of the program. It's an 8-week program, and every week feeds into the next. So week 1 will feed into week 2, and you have homework. So there's homework designed into the program as well. We create a timeline of all of your losses. And this timeline starts from your dawn of conscious memory. So the very first time that you realized that you were in the world, that you were you, you could be at Nana's house sitting on the sofa eating a Welsh cake. You could be playing in the garden on a swing. So you check in with where you were and how old you were when you first remembered being you. And then we list all of the losses that we have experienced in our lifetime, and particularly the loss that brought us to this place in the first instance. And then we look at our relationships. So we will connect the losses to the relationships that have impacted us, that are connected to those losses. And then we will look at the loss, the relationships, and decide which person in our life has had the most impact that we need to work with for this grief piece, because it's not necessarily the person that brought you to the program. It could be a completely different person. So for me, I had a lot of sort of trauma from my dad, and in my head I'm like, I'm gonna process that. That's what I'm here for. I'm traumatized. I've got a lot of trauma from that experience. And it ended up being, I processed my mother. And so what led me there is not what ended, it was completely different. And then you do a series of letters of forgiveness, letters of acceptance, letters of apology, because it's called the 1% theory. So in the program, we will have 1% responsibility in what's happened to us. And it could just be that, I don't know, like one of my, I suppose, examples would be that I'm thinking a bit with my mum, or that I shot a glance at my mum and I had a clip across the head, and back in the day when that happened. And it was my fault I had 1% for shooting a glance at my mum. So it's not saying that I deserved to be smacked, but I have got a very, very small accountability and responsibility in what happened. And obviously there's lots more severe, traumatic experiences. We're not grouping them, but we start to look at our relationships. We write letters of apology, and it's all about unresolved relationships and matters that we haven't resolved. And even people that have passed on, we can still go through that process, and we can have like energy releasing ceremonies where you can you can go and read by graveside your letter, your final completion letter with these individuals. And so there's lots of ways of releasing and severing bonds and forgiving yourself in that process, as well as maybe, sometimes things that happen to us are unforgivable. I believe that, I'm an honest speaking person. There's some things that I'm sorry, I don't see where there's forgiveness there. And you have to forgive yourself in those moments, because you can't forgive the other person. So you have to release and free yourself in that situation. And so at the end of it, it's honestly the group. So I can take up to 15 people in a group. I keep the sessions a lot more intimate, a lot smaller. One-to-ones, in my view, are for people that really struggle in social environments. the group sessions have blown my mind. The bonds in the sharing and the way that, you know, the participants hold each other, they forge friendships from it, and you don't feel lonely anymore with your grief. You don't feel odd. You don't feel as if you're overly emotional. You're validated. All your experiences are validated. Somebody's listening to you. And the strap line that I love to use is, your heart needs to be heard. And there's a wonderful book by the Samaritans. It's called The Art of Listening. And it's thematic of that, in my view. Listen, you've got two of these and you've got one of these. And we need to do more of this.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's, I can hear the passion in your voice when you're talking about this. And I am absolutely with you with peer-to-peer support. We're developing a menopause hopefully UK menopause program, and we feel that we want to educate about the nuts and bolts about it, but we think what would be really powerful, and I've done some support groups already, and also some on endometriosis and difficult periods, and I think being with people and sharing and supporting other people who have been through similar but not identical but similar experiences to you is the most powerful. I totally agree with you, Debbie. That is a really, really powerful. And Debbie, I'm going to put in the show notes your web link and Instagram and everything.
Yeah.
But where are you located? So if people want to come and share with any of your practices and your healings, where are you?
So we're in South Wales, and in a very small town called Pontardawe, which sits right in between Swansea and Neath. We're right on the border, so you'll find us there. So yes, Swansea, I'd probably say, is the location of where we are.
Yeah. Excellent. That's actually quite doable. When I went to the big retreat festival and I put the sat nav to come home, it's like I did a little indirect route getting there, and on the way home it said you will be home in 6 hours. Actually it was bank holiday Monday, so it was actually about double that. But anyway, I won't go there.
No.
So yeah, I'm really glad you're not over that then, which is beautiful. No. Anyway, but and Debbie, the final questions I ask all my guests, and I can't wait to see what you say. So I ask everyone, and I've done this forever. I've asked so many people this now, hundreds. What makes you happy, Debbie, and where is your happy place?
I like the sense of freedom. I don't know whether I am a free spirit or a wild child. I haven't determined which. Maybe I'm both. But I like freedom. I don't like that feeling of being restricted. So I like to walk barefoot. I've never got shoes on. And I'm very down to earth and easy when it comes to finding my happy place. I love the beach. I love the forest. I walked up the forest this morning with the dog. I love being with my dogs. I love being with my family. And my cleansing ritual, I have a sauna, and I go in the cold water immersion as well, and that helps me to clear my head and cleanse. But I'm a nature girl. I like just being out in the elements with no restrictions, no limitations. I think I'm a wild child, Joyce.
I think you're like me. I think we're probably a bit of both. But time in nature. I'm writing a book at the moment about life for women over 50. I interviewed 51 women over 50, and there's a whole chapter on being in nature. I think it's non-negotiable. I think if we want good health and happiness, and I never wear shoes. I don't have slippers. I normally wear sandals. I do sometimes wear trainers, but I have got no shoes on now. I have said this before, I haven't got any underwear on either.
No, me. I didn't know whether that was like PC. I have neither.
I don't know why I said it. And then that's why I said it. I thought, why am I saying this? I have said it before, but when it's been we did one about bras, and I said I never wear a bra at home. Oh, Debbie, look, that was meant to be.
Same. Yeah, it was.
I
You went first. You went first.
I wear dresses. I've always worn dresses. I've worn them since I was a child. I used to make all my own clothes. When
Oh,
I just wear a dress. I haven't got anything else on. No shoes, no
yeah.
socks.
Same, same.
Look at us. I knew that. See, I knew that in the back of my mind. Now, Debbie, the very final question. I know in your life you have been through a lot.
Yeah.
And so this might be tricky, but what advice would Debbie give her younger self?
I think trust in yourself more, trust in your gut, and don't let anybody tell you what you are and what you can and can't achieve. And yeah, I think that would have changed the trajectory of my life, really, rather than scrambling and hustling and finding my way. If I was just grounded enough to just trust in my gut and be led by my gut, be led by my heart, regardless of the outside chatter, turn the volume down or switch the volume off and drop in to how you feel.
Here. My mantra or motto at the moment is trying to tell everyone about self-care and self-love. And I think we need to tell young people, stop worrying about everyone else. Make sure you're okay, and
Yeah.
trust yourself. Yeah, that's really fabulous words. Debbie, this has been absolute. I've been trying to grab you for ages since the big retreat, and which I came away with a list of people. I've had most of them on my podcast now, but I'm going to have to delay some to January, including Amber, who runs the big retreat. I need to get back to do. I'm doing some medical conditions. Actually, we're going to talk about dementia and osteoporosis and those sorts of things this year. And I promised myself I'd do that, but I've got so carried away with reclaiming joy. And Debbie, it's been absolutely joyful to talk to you and hear about your fantastic work. And I hope that everyone comes and meets you at some time and comes to some of your practices and lies in those beautiful hammocks. For those that can't, they're just listening, they're a beautiful sky blue colour, and I want to hang in one very, very soon. So Debbie, thank you so much, and I'm going to come and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Joyce. Thank you.